So I'm Megan Forkey. I'm the marketing consultant for the Episcopal Church in Colorado, and I co-run Caffeinated Church along with Mike. And today we have Rhonda Palazzari. I hope I pronounced your name right, Rhonda. She is a mixed media artist, designer, author, and photographer. She's in Denver, Colorado, and she's going to lead a conversation on graphic design for beginners and color theory. If you'll hold your questions till the end or put them in the chat, and then she'll answer all the questions at the end. So Rhonda, if you want to start, I think we're ready.
You beat me to it. I was going to unmute myself.
Oh.
I'm Rhonda Palazzari. It's two Z's like pizza, so Palazzari. I was a Jones, so I was happy to get my new name. It's a lot more character. And I am Italian, so I'm glad I have the last name to go with it. So, like Megan said, I am an author and all this other stuff. So I'm happy to help here. I've been doing church media and graphic arts for a long time, more than 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, somewhere around that time. But I've been doing design and theory and all that for 15 plus years or so. So I'm here to help. And hopefully you'll gain something from this. And I'm also available afterwards. I put my email up. I'm going to start by screen sharing and going into that. So my face is going away. You're going to see my presentation, but hopefully you'll gain something. So do I have control, Megan?
You should have control.
Okay. So go here. And let me put it on the presentation view. Okay. So for me, design is good storytelling, and that's where it begins. Like Megan said, hold the questions till the end. I'll be happy to answer them. There's some links I've provided too, and the presentation will also be available offline. So today I'm going to walk you through what I thought would be the fundamentals for any beginning. There's a wealth of stuff in here, but there's also more that you can do. But this is just the beginning of this. So I didn't want to overwhelm you, but I did want to give you something that will give you a lot of meat. So we're going to go through introductions and graphic storytelling, the audience, the type of graphics. The first part I might fly through a little bit so we can get into the meat, what you really are here for. The general rules. We're going to talk about typeface and typography, white space photographs, color theory. Color theory on its own could be this 1 hour, honestly. But for this purposes, I've condensed it down so to give you some good ideas. The programs and tools we use for this, training, copyright, we need to go over copyright. We're churches, we need to talk about that. Critiques and vision boards, and then there's resources and then any questions. I guess one of the things I think about too is how many are pastors, how many are communications, how many are office administrators trying to do communication. So I come at this from all that point of view, because when I first started at a church, I was technically the office administrator doing communications. So for me, I'm a child of God, a follower of Christ. I'm a mixed media author, artist, author. I'm an instructor with Craftsy. If you've heard of that online, it was Craftsy and Blueprint. Now it's back to Craftsy. Graphic designer. I'm a licensed product designer, which means that I have a line of stencils, a line of washi tape, and I design for people with my name on it. And I get a set royalties back for that. Photographer, so I do actually family photo shoots, but I also do professional photography that like ended up in my books. So my business name is Rhonda Palazzari Designs LLC. I was the director of operations and then social media and design coordinator for Summit of Peace. Right now, I'm in retirement. That's never true. I'm still working. But my grandkids are in remote learning. And so that was really important for me to stop and take care of them while they're doing remote learning in Denver, but I'm still doing things, and I will gear back up pretty soon here. So this is why I think they selected me, is because I do have a wealth of knowledge. I don't like talking about myself, so this is the last you'll hear about that. I'm also a wife to Andrew. He's a commercial airline pilot. So I've had a lot of free time on my own. Mother to two. I have a daughter who's a DCE, Director of Christian Education, and a son who's 24 who's training to be a commercial airline pilot. I have 4 grandkids. I got grandkids early, but it means that I can just run around with them. And I love to travel. And so I'm always looking for inspiration all around the world. And I am a dork and a communication nerd. I get into this, and you're going to see it come up. So that's about me. What you need to know is people are visual learners. Like, there's 3 types of learners. I also have an education background, by the way, too. So I'm a little bit of everything. But 65% of the population is visual learners. And so they often relate to things visually. So what we do has to appeal to them visually. And so we have to think about those things when we're presenting our communication. How does it look visually? Because if it doesn't, we're going to lose them right off the bat. So 90% of the information is processed by the brain visually. And we process 60,000 times faster, images 60 times faster than anything else. So if these numbers and statistics don't pull you into why you need good graphics, I mean, this is telling you. 80% of people remember what they see compared to what they hear or what they read. I know a fact that's not in here is that Instagram is now got over, I think it's 2 billion users. It's second to Facebook, and Instagram's platform is pictures. It's images and pictures. So Facebook's photos Facebook photos have interaction rate of 87% higher. And the next thing is videos. It's already there. Tweets with images receive 150% more retweets than those without them. And 95 million photos are shared daily on Instagram. So these are reasons why graphics and images are so important, even for a church. So what's the church's responsibility here? So what do we need to do, and how do we use graphics when we are sharing our message and doing that? You have to think of what are the vision and goals that we are doing. I always back this up to that. What is the vision or goal that I'm trying to communicate here? And a lot of times it's not me that answers that. It's the ministry that has to answer that. It's the overall church that has to answer that, or it's the overall, like you guys are from the synod or whatever it is. Somebody higher than you is probably going to answer that, but you need to ask that question to figure out what it is so you can communicate it clearly. And what is superfluous, because some information doesn't need to be on there, but they think that it needs to be on there. And you have to weed through that. And I always like to say it's people over programs. And so a lot of times they just want you to advertise what they're doing, but people are more interested in people and engaging that way than just putting up a slide of information. So you need to think about those things as you go forward. I have developed for my church a communication form that they have to look at and fill out, and it has to be turned in. And I tell them that it's a minimum of 4 weeks that they have to turn it in. And that was really hard for them to get used to in the beginning, but they do it now. So the first thing they have to look at is the audience. Who are you trying to reach, and what is your message to them? A lot of times churches, and my church included, tends to only think of just the people that we're in contact with, just the church members, right? That's all we're reaching, but it's a larger audience than that, and sometimes it's a smaller audience than that. So you have to think of that. So on the form, I put this circle with numbers on it. Is it the community, the crowd, the congregation, the committed, or the core? And so I'm going to take you through this. But first, I want you to think about it in a biblical way. So Jesus had his core group, right? It was his most faithful and loved disciples. They love telling us this. And do you remember who these three were? Anybody remember who the three were? John, Peter, James, the three. And so he would keep talking to them, right? That when he wanted just the tight circle, he would go to them. Then he had his committed, the 12 apostles. Those were the committed that he had. But the Bible also tells us that there was 72 disciples that he sent out. And then he had the crowd that followed Jesus around. It included all the disciples and everything else, but the crowds would follow us around. And then the community was everybody that included the Pharisees and Sadducees. So when we look at our communication through this scope of what Jesus did, it becomes clearer what we need to do to communicate. So our core may be those members who serve in leadership, because they're going to be the ones that, if you're sending out a message and you need to get things done, the core is who you have to train first. And then it may be the committed, those that are actually, we call it the 80-20 or the 20-80, the 20% that gets 80% of the work done. And then you may need to send the information out to the congregation. And those are the members of your community. But maybe it needs to go out to the crowd, anybody who attends. And then the larger part is the community, believers, non-believers, whoever you're trying to reach, to invite them to learn more. So you have to define who your audience is. And usually you don't get to decide this, but it's crucial when you're creating graphics to know who your audience is so that you are tailoring the graphics to that specific audience. So I encourage you, and if you want my communication form, don't hesitate to ask. I will find a way to get it to you. But it's crucial to know who your audience is so you can create graphics that appeal to those particular groups. So type of graphics, there's tons of different types of graphics out there, and what are your church's needs? You got to think about that. Graphics and communications, it's usually the last things that churches think about. They go, oh yeah, we need to get this out. But I am a proponent that churches now, especially with COVID happening and the way we send out messages, that I would argue that a DEDIC communications person is probably the first person you need to add to staff now over anybody else, because we're going to live in an age where digital is key. So what kind of graphics do you need? There's about 8 different types of graphic designs out there. And these are visual identity, marketing, advertising, user interface, publication, packaging, motion, environmental, and art and illustration. And I would say that the church hits on about 7 of these. And these are individual specialties, and yet the church uses about 7 of these. So visual identity graphics is anything you're doing to brand. I mean, if I throw up that logo, I guarantee you know what I'm talking about. So it's anything branding, anything, if I put up a little swoosh, you know which company I'm talking about. It communicates the personality, tone, memory, essence of a company through images, shapes, colors, typography. So Starbucks has their own typography that they use, their own particular, and don't throw stones at me when I say font, but they have their own font that they use. Every company has a select font, select colors, and their image, and the way you can use their image. This is branding and how to, so every time you see it, you know that company. And what they're communicating, the green for Starbucks is, hey, we recycle. Hey, we're earthy. Hey, come buy our coffee. And so they choose these images on purpose. So the church should actually be branding itself. What is your brand? What are you saying to people? What is the thing that you are known for? And we did go back a couple years ago and brand ourselves because we realized that's what we really needed. Marketing and advertising graphic design marketing is the big overall, it is the big overall name, and everything else falls into it. So marketing designers work with a company to create this package and strategies that you're going to do. They're going to create a broad assessment of like what things should look like. So, and then the graphic design helps organize and promote and communicate that effectively. So they're the broad and everything. They try to help you say, this is what you need to do in these areas. And you should have things like posters and flyers, magazines and newspaper ads, banners, billboards, infographics, brochures. They're going to say it needs to look like this and this and this and this and this. And have you thought about this and this and this and this to go out to the public? That's marketing. And you can see banners, images for websites, menus. They want you to be consistent. User interface graphics are the things that you're going to use on a web page, on theme designs, on game interfaces, on apps, buttons, colors, all these things that you may not think about, but should think about to tie into your color and branding and things that make it user-friendly. Because if it's not user-friendly, people will click away. You have it says it's about like 30 seconds to capture somebody on your website. So an example would be something like this. And I'm telling you, you know, our website is great. It's better than a lot, but I still want to overhaul it and make it, I'm always tweaking. So, but you have that top bar that tells you in an instant, why should people come and how should they dig deeper? You have little buttons that they can click on to see and do. So you got to think about this. What makes it user-friendly? What makes it in an instant? And does it tie back to your vision? Publication is any public distribution. Books, newspapers, newsletters, directories, magazines, and now there's a rise in the digital. I mean, we dropped our print newsletter a couple years ago, went totally digital. We still print the digital newsletter for a few of our older people that want to read it. We print it out, but most things have gone digital. You can do digital books and things like that, but it's still, how does it look for public distribution? Packaging graphic designs. These are the people, the graphic designers that deal specifically with how things are packaged and what it looks like with a package. They can be jack of all trades and just work in general, or they can specialize and work for like food companies or clothing or toys. And they specifically design packaging for those industries. As a church, you have to think about things that you're going to produce and put out there for the public too. How's it going to look? What are you going to put things on? And it may not seem like something you think about, but in the grand scope of things, it all has to come together. And it's something you really should think about. We tend to do things like, oh yeah, we need this. But again, with communications, we have to think of a broad picture and how it plays into the vision and how it plays into the message the church is sending. Motion graphics are being kicked up really a lot. You'll see even on Facebook now that the headers can motion, graphics motion. Canva's gone to some motion graphics. These are title sequence, in credits, advertisement, animated logos now. Trailers, presentations, sometimes have churches have sermon bumpers now, like they would for their upcoming sermons, and like a movie would for a trailer. Websites, apps, again, these are graphics you specifically create for motion. So it's another way that we are jack of all trades in the graphic design. Environmental graphic designs are the way that people connect to your places. Is it memorable? Is it informative? Is it interesting? Is it easy to navigate? And this is signage, wall murals. These are museum exhibits. So you have, if you think of it this way, if you've ever gone to, like in Denver, we had just recently the Norman Rockwell visit. So you can, the actual Norman Rockwell paintings are one thing, but how it's laid out is another. And so that can be off-putting. You can love the photographs or the artwork, but you hate how it's laid out. And so the same thing goes with your church. And for this, I recommend you walk through your church with what we call visitor's eyes. Show up at your church and act like you are seeing it for the first time, and think about, how would I get to the bathroom? How would I know to get to the sanctuary, or where to meet people? How would my kids know where to go? What does it look like? And start looking for the signage. Start looking for if people are telling you where to go, and you will be surprised. It's kind of like the dirty laundry that you have in the laundry basket that's just sitting there, and you don't notice it until somebody comes and knocks on your door and you're like, I gotta get that basket out of here. So these are some examples after we walked through our church and noticed that we don't have any signs for the restrooms up. And no wonder people always ask us where the restrooms are. So we changed that. And then this other one is right as people walk out. Above it, you can't, we took the photo before we finished it, but it says, you are the mission field. And then we put dots on it to tell them when they leave that that's where they're heading into the mission field and where we do our work. Art and illustration for graphic design. Now, these are people that actually create art that then gets turned into graphic designs. And Norman Rockwell is a perfect example of that. They do large paintings or drawings, or you can think of comic books or things like that, that then get put into like a magazine cover or book cover or things like that. And so I was just at the Norman Rockwell exhibit, and you can see on the right, that's the actual painting. And then on the left is how it was used in the Evening Post. And so he specifically created that knowing that it was going to be for publication. The thing about Norman Rockwell is he never thought he was a true artist, and he really was. Because he thought he did it for print, he never thought he was a real artist. So, so now those were the basic types of graphic design. And you can see as a church, we pretty much hit on a lot of those. So if you think about it, these people that actually do that for a living are specializing in each area. But as a church, we're responsible for almost all of those areas. And so it can be overwhelming. The thing about it is that there's people out there to help you, like me. There's groups out there, and we can do this together if we do it thoughtfully and carefully. So now I'm going to go into basic design theory. This is the meat. So that's why I flew through the other section. And now we're going to talk about some general rules. So we're going to talk about alignment, repetition, contrast, hierarchy, balance, and color theory. And you can see I put a little asterisk. Like I said, color theory is its own unique whole class. I'm going to touch on some of it. But honestly, I could talk about color theory for days. So alignment is how we position things. And you can think about it not only with images, but also with our body of work, like our type, our communications. Is it left justification? Is it right justification? Is it centered? Repetition is the repeating of elements to create familiarity. Contrast is two elements that are opposites. So it could be big and small. It can be colors that are contrasting, and we'll get into that. Balance is the distribution on the page. I need to move my, there we go. And it's by the elements on the page. And hierarchy is like, what is important? I mean, that's really what hierarchy is. What is the visual organization and what is the importance? And then color theory. Oops, get to that. All right, alignment is with shapes, photos, images, text, typography. And you can see to the left of the screen, the alignment of the black dots are over top left. This is meaning, like, how do we take our images, our shapes, or our text and align them that creates flow on the page? Where you place your images or these things really do matter. Your eyes flow off the page by you placing these things. One of the best things my journalism teacher taught me in freshman journalism many years ago was she took newspapers, put them up all around the room, and had us go with a black marker and draw where our eyes goes with the photos, the headlines, and the type. And so you start to see how things flow and where your eyes go off the page. So alignment really does matter because you're leading your people to see how things flow off the page or where their eyes are directed. So having a strong alignment allows our eyes to know where to go and what things are important. So you can see I have two examples here. This is just a quick graphic I put together to just show an example. On the left is the alignment is horizontal with the dots below it and the name and the information below that. On the right, the alignment is vertical with the dots right next to it. And you can decide for yourself which one do you think is visually pleasing. But you can see the difference in the tension that it creates when you change the alignment. Repetition strengthens a design by otherwise tying separate parts together. So you're repeating elements so that it's just not like one thing out in space and your eyes going, what is that thing doing there? You know, and it happens in documents and graphic elements. Like if you're having multiple pages that you're printing out, say you're doing a sermon series and your pastor wants you to have sermon notes for your congregation, how you repeat elements for the congregation matter. If you have a header and you have the page numbers, those things matter. Where you place the page number, things like that. You need to repeat elements to create this bond for people. Let me go back. So the 3 dots on the side is a repetition, but also there's 3 triangles over on the side. So it repeats the pattern. So you're creating repetition. These are some advertisements that we had a senior youth fundraiser where they placed flamingos in the yard and they called it being flocked. And then you had to pay for flamingo removal for the senior youth. They would come and remove the flamingos from your yard and then you could send it to another person to have them flocked. It was a fantastic fundraiser, especially during COVID. Everybody had fun when you're locked in your house, and to see flamingos suddenly appear in your yard, it was great. And we actually added face masks on the flamingos this year. But to have that repeating element of the 3 flamingos, I could have just had one right there, giant, but it was better to have it repeated 3 times. 3 is a magic number, odd numbers are better. 3, 5, 7, those are things. And if you see the block print, it's centered and it's 3 big blocks that are going down the page. And this was the sign that went out in the front yard that said, "You've been flocked." Over to the right is a sermon series that we're doing right now. it's a little square that we've been promoting, and it has the 3 elements that are going forward. You know, in churches, we always like the number 3, but there's a repetition there. You can see the alignment so far, and you can see where I'm leading their eyes to go to, and the tree is the heavy on the side. So repetition. Contrast is one of the most effective ways to create emphasis and impact your design. So like I said, contrast is opposites, big, little. It can be, so it can be tall and wide. It can be like bold font versus thin font. Like you can have a chunky font and then a very thin font. You could have a sans serif font and a serif font, and we'll talk about those in a bit. It can be colors that jump off the page, but it impacts and emphasizes your design. Contrast is a good way, like I said. Warm and cool colors, dark and light, smooth and rough textures. This was Psalms was our summer sermon series, and the blue and the orange are contrasting. There's a big font and little icons at the bottom, so you're creating contrast there to create just that pow factor. And people don't even realize it just with the subtle colors and everything else. The black and the white, that creates contrast on its own. So that's my example of contrast. You can use a lot of different elements to create contrast and create that pow. Balance. So balance is, there's 2 different balances. There's symmetry. Symmetry is the one on the right. So you can see that the 6 dots are balanced in symmetry. So they reflect one another. The tension, in art we would call it asymmetry, but in graphic design it's called tension, is that one is bigger than the other, but it creates balance because one has the meat of it, and the others are up. We still have balance because they're well spatial, but it creates tension. And sometimes you want that tension in your artwork. You want people to do whatever it is you're emphasizing needs a little more oomph. So I took these 2 as a side by side so you could see the contrast between the 2. So the one was a sermon series called You Asked For It. These were questions that we had anybody submitted questions on our Facebook page, our members, and let them submit questions for our sermon series. And so one of the questions was, why do bad things happen to good people? And so we really wanted to emphasize their questions. So you put up a big bold speech bubble. You balance it off with putting the same kind of font and things down at the bottom. It's got balance, but you know what is important. We want them to know their questions are important. The Psalms is like more of a, how do you use Psalms in your life? It's a way to, especially during COVID, to go to them because they're songs of lament, songs of happiness, especially of, oh God, how long are we going to have COVID? And so we wanted to make it a little more peaceful. And so even though there's contrast there, it still has that nice symmetry, peacefulness. Hierarchy. So hierarchy is just like you would think. What is the most important thing that you want to stand out? And if you think about it in like newspapers or headlines of like television shows, it's the headline, it's the image, it's the subheadline, it's the call to action, it's the body. We think about these things as what is the most important thing? What do we want to grab their attention first? And that is where you're going to give your emphasis. There's a single message that you want them to take away. If that's the only thing that they take away, great. That's what you want them to do. So that's what hierarchy is, visual organization to design. It gives the reader an idea where to begin and where to go to. So if Easter services are the thing that I want them to take away, and then they can know to go to the website to look it up, then that's what they get. All right, so typography, typeface, font. Okay, this is where graphic designers get a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Angry over the word usage here. But I'm not that person. I'm gonna let you know that it's okay to use the word font with me. So typeface is actually the design of the lettering, and it includes variations of like bold, regular. It's actually when they actually cut out the typeface in the wood blocks to make the actual print. And typography is the art and technique of arranging the type. So how they arranged it. This is like the word like kerning, point size, link lines, and everything else. And font is actually specifically the family or the typeface. Each of these variations is a font. So when you say font to a graphic designers, they're going to roll their eyes at you. But I don't care. So this is, if you learn one thing today from me, never ever use Comic Sans or Papyrus. And I am not kidding when I said that. My boss came to me one time after he went to a conference for pastors, and he goes, you know what they told me? They told me that I should never use this one font. And I'm like, Comic Sans? And he goes, yeah. And I said, they're right, you shouldn't. He goes, but I use it all the time. I said, I know, and I've been trying to get you to stop for years. I change it all the time. And he goes, but I really like it, and I like Papyrus. And I'm like, oh, no. So I went and deleted them off of his computer, and he never knew, but it's okay. The only people that I think can use Comic Sans is my best friend who's a kindergarten teacher, because that's appropriate, but otherwise don't use Comic Sans. Fonts speak, they say things. Is it readable? Is it relatable to your story? Do you use bold, italic, thin? What is the spacing between the letters? Is it sans serif or serif? And we're going to get into what that means. But fonts have a personality. And so if you put up a bad font on a really good graphic design, it's already trashed. So here's the difference between serif versus sans serif. So sans serif, well, let's do this way. Serif is the little extra little things on the letters, the little curls, the little standouts. So if it's sans, meaning without, then it's without those little serif points. So most of the time, I feel sans serif is more readable than serif. That's my own personal preference. They did come out that Helvetica is one of the most readable fonts. The PC version of that would be like Arial. Georgia is a good readable font as well. So just make sure that you're choosing readable fonts. Just because you like them doesn't mean that everybody can read them. And you need to check the characters too, because if all of a sudden you put up a G that doesn't look like a G, it'll throw people off. So here's some examples of storytelling with fonts that didn't go so well. Would you buy a sign from that person that can't use grammar correctly? Or I'm not going to that massage therapist. So these are examples of when font comes into play and you shouldn't. And exactly the same thing here. That's not a Harley Davidson club that I want to go with. And that's not a dentist, a cosmetic dentist that I think I would feel comfortable with. So these are examples that you really don't want to, it tells the story. Big Al's Harley Davidson Club with all those swirls makes me wonder. And the cosmetic dentistry that has a very grungy font means that either his office isn't very clean or he's going to do bad dental work on me. So storytelling with fonts is important. Make sure you're picking fonts that match the story you're telling. So with our Crew, which is our high school youth program, or with our confirmation programs, we do pick kind of fonts in their age range that would appeal to them, because that's our target audience. They're on Instagram and Instagram stories. So when we do that, we use fonts and we use the GIFs on there to appeal to them. When we have a larger target audience, we're going to use cleaner fonts and go for that. Let me go back to the fonts. I do give you a list of places where you can go get fonts. And I tell you that if you Google 10 best font combinations, you can find a list of things that go well together. They'll tell you. Everybody has their favorite fonts that they go to. So it's going to be subjective, but you start to get an idea. I like when I do a big bold font to do a nice thin font to go with it, so that one is leading the other. So you can see that on these groups, like the life group one is the big bold font. I want people to know these are life groups coming. And then the information underneath there is the thinner font. The Crew virtual hangout is the most important information on there. And then when it happens is underneath that. So Google 10 best font combinations. You'll get about 50 hits for that. Everybody has their favorites. White space. This is the thing that nobody thinks about, but is really, really, really important. If you fill up the white space, there's no breathing room and it gets hard for your eyes to rest. It's the negative space. So you can see the examples here when you use white space well and when you don't use white space well. Have you ever seen an ad where everything is all jumbled up and you don't know where to look? You have to have breathing space for your designs. So I challenge you to look for good white space. That means leaving room, having a resting place, and balancing it with all the other design elements so it leads. Okay, photos. Photos also tell the story. You can use stock photos, but that's not you. The better thing is to get real photos. This was a color war that the senior youth had. I always make sure that there's somebody at an event taking photos. Teens are great at taking photos, and they'll take a lot. The only thing you have to remind them is that the camera does turn. So just remind them that don't just take them this way, take them this way. With iPhones, there's so many abilities to take photos. Every event, everything you can do, take a photo, because it can be cropped. You need to have waivers for these photos. So everybody that joins our church, everybody that comes, they sign a waiver and it goes in their file for their kids and for themselves. And you can get good photographers. You can ask in your congregation or your people if anybody's interested in photography, and put them to work. We have tapped on kids and adults that love to do photography, and we just give them a Dropbox links for them to put them in for us, and then I'll go through and pick and sort. And you can always crop a bad image. So these are two graphics I've created. One was the first Summit Sundays, where we were doing outdoor services to bring people in. But then the next week after I'd taken a photo, I changed the graphic because it is more effective to have people in the graphic. It's relatable. They know what's coming. So photos and images are important. And headshots are important. I made the staff, I'm like, we're doing headshots. They're like, we don't want to do headshots. I said, I don't care. We're doing headshots. It all has to look the same. When you're presenting on the website and you've got one that's way far away and then one that's close up and nobody looks the same, it puts you off. Is this something that you want a church to represent you as a church? So you need headshots, you need building, you need action, you need details, you need candidates, you need events, you need everything. So get your photographers out there and take photos. Give them a common place to drop them in and you can get it. And like I said, you can crop. You can see the one on the right is the photo, the one on the left is the one I would use. This is when our kids were being ushers and being they're serving. And so you can change the image to what the story is telling. We do a church camp out. And so these are some of the two are some of the images from a baptism. That's the pastor. And right after he baptized her, the one is the communion from there. The other is a detail of a backpack drive. And so not only can I use it during this event to tell how many backpacks we collected and what we did to serve, but next year when we go to do the backpack drive, now I have a photo to put with it. So it's not just a one-time thing. I can use these multiple ways. So I can use these to advertise for the camping for next year. There's so many different ways you can use photos. So keep them, collect them, curate them. All right, I have 10 minutes to go through color theory. So let's do this. Subtractive versus additive. These are words that you may or may not know, but they're really, really important. And this is primary where people get frustrated. Subtractive color is what we see when light reflects off a surface, such as ink or paper or paint on a wall. So that is the one that is on the right. It is subtractive is, we would call it CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and K is key for black because they used to key in the black ink. Additive is created from emitted light. It is a video screen or a computer monitor. We often call it RGB, which is red, green, and blue. And this is why people say, well, it looked different on my screen, but when I printed it, it came out totally, completely different. Yes, because you were working in RGB, which is what your monitor was showing, but you printed it in CMYK, which is subtractive. And those two are very different. So if you're working, like say in Adobe Photoshop, and you know you're going to print it, then you need to change it into CMYK for printing and print it and work in that for printing. But if you know it's going to go on a screen for slides, then you need to work in RGB. And those are the two differences. So the color wheel is all important. This will help you. This is a basic color wheel. Isaac Newton was the one that has developed it because he worked with prisms. The basic color wheel is made up of primaries, secondaries, and tertiary colors. But if you honestly add in tints, which is adding in whites, and now I'm talking purely in subtractive color, and then blacks as shades, then you can get something like the 3D model you're seeing on your right. It is huge, the color range you get. And with light, with additive color, you can see thousands upon thousands of different colors. So this is why color theory is huge. So colors must fit together in a piece of a puzzle or cogs in a wheel. This is Hans Hofmann, a painter. They have to go together. Bad color theory, bad colors together, and you're turned off. So color increases brand recognition by 80%. Black swoosh, green logo, golden arches, you know it right away. 93% of buyers focus on appearance. So you know you have red, blue, yellow, those are your primaries. You mix them to get what we would call violet, everybody calls it purple, green, and orange. And then the tertiaries are usually said like this in the art world. They're said red violet or blue violet, blue green or yellow green. So you always put the primary first and then the secondary next. So colors have associations, both realistic, psychologically symbolic. So in a psychiatric office, they'll paint the office weather colors green to calm people down. Blue is the most trustworthy color. That's why you will see news anchors always usually in blue. They wear blue. It's very trustworthy. You buy toothpaste because it has a blue tint to it. It never had a blue tint before, but it did because you associate it with it being trustworthy. Same with your detergent. You want it blue because it's clean. Red has the most range. It can represent love and hate. Red on a screen, you got to be really, really careful with. Yellow can be, again, one of those colors that's really, you have to be careful with. It can be surprise, but it also can be apprehensive. There's a reason McDonald's paints their interior red and yellow. They want it to be a happy place, but they want you to get your food and get out. They want that high turnover. They hire people to do color theory and color theorists and to get the psychology right. And then we talked about colors. In subtractive color, which is again, your inks and pigments, white is the absence of color and black is all the colors. Now in additive, it's the opposite. White is all the colors and black is the absence of colors, just to confuse you more. But black and white are colors. And then brown is a neutral. Brown is when you get contrasting colors mixed. So, and we'll talk about contrasting colors. And the one color you didn't see up there, which everybody calls a color, and it's my pet peeve, I admit it, is pink. Pink is not a color. Pink is a tint. It's how you add white to red, and we actually call it pink instead of light red, but it's actually not a color. So you can see the difference between black and white and what it does to these particular advertisements. Neutrals are going to be your browns and your grays. It's going to be in that area. You can do things monochromatically. So monochromatically is going to give you a very calm design. So you're going to use it when you want something calm but effective. It's using just the base color, which would be the hue, the blue, and then adding the tints and the shades around it, monochromatic. Complementary or opposite on the color wheel. So a lot of your sports teams have complementary colors. Denver Broncos, complementary colors. Miami Dolphins, Vikings, complementary colors. The triad is 3 colors on the color wheel where you can see where the triangles go. You can rotate that triangle and that's a triad. And the analogous is close together. There are 4 colors close together. Now there's also split complementary, a tetrad, and split analogous, but we don't need to go there. We can just keep with these. So complementary colors. My pastor is a die-hard Broncos fan, so anytime I can give him Bronco colors, he's really, really happy. But complementary colors are the ones, again, that you're going to create a lot of contrast. This is like, hey, this is important. I want you to look at it. Analogous are pretty calm. They create like a harmony with them. And I'm giving you Van Gogh's sunflowers there. If you want to look, Van Gogh does a lot of different things with colors. He's a great color artist. Triad. We got Superman, and we've got this other one that has like a magenta. Well, it's not really magenta, but you get the idea. That creates, it's not quite as contrast as complement, but it gives you interest, a lot of interest. And so I really do like the Triad because it gives you something there. Okay, so we flew through color theory. I'm going to go to programs and tools to get the job done. We can use Word, Publisher, Google Docs to do basic layouts of newsletters and things. I would choose Publisher over Word because it gives you more stagnant, and you can do text boxes and photos and things like that. MailChimp and Constant Contact are great email newsletter resources. They have templates already in there. You can choose a template to your liking and set it up and do that. HubSpot also has one of those too. I'm not as familiar with it as that. I'm an Adobe Creative Suite girl because I work in Adobe, but that is a high level one. But I'll tell you, I am self-taught. I've Googled the internet. I've just played around in it until I got comfortable with it. I use Photoshop and Illustrator. I also use InDesign and Premiere. Premiere is the video capability. So what I'm talking about is just this whole package. You don't have to buy the whole package. You can buy bits and pieces of the package, but it's one of the ones that a lot of the designers use, especially Illustrator. There's some free ones out there. GIMP, Apple Pie Designs, those are free on the internet. Canva is a great place to start. They have templates beyond templates there. And sometimes I'll just go in Canva to create what I want because I don't want to load up Photoshop and take the time, or Illustrator and take the time. Canva has templates. They have a lot of free images that you can use. You can upload designs into them. They even have a nonprofit free if you can get to it. It takes a lot of turning in your 501c3 forms and jumping through hoops, but you can get it for free. Inkscape, Sketch, that's a Mac only one. Blender, PowerPoint you can use for this, but these are different programs you can use to create whatever it is you're creating, newsletters, slide graphics, whatever it is. And training, you can use, there's Lynda, which is a great online community to learn like Photoshop. Local community colleges have Photoshop, Illustrator, all those things. YouTube is a vast, everybody can go to YouTube and learn different things. Mentors, there's people in your community or on the website that can do it, and just play. Play, because that's what I did. I figured there's nothing I could do to a design that I wasn't turning in that it didn't matter. So what's the damage I'm gonna do? Copyright. Don't do copy wrong. If you're using an image, it should be copyright free. You can't just take something off the internet and say it's okay because I'm a church. That's wrong. There's places where you can get images and graphics for free and use them. But to take just something off a website is stealing. And we are a church, and thou shalt not steal. We have to uphold those even more so than anybody else. And as a designer, I can tell you, anybody that takes my design, after I spent hours working on a design and I only get pennies on that design, it really does hurt me when they do that, because I would give it away to them for free if they asked me, but they just stole it. Critiques and mood boards are a great way to get feedback and collect ideas. So you can ask a trusted 3 people to get critique on your thing. You know, hey, how does this look? What would you change? You can create a mood board. Pinterest is a great visual mood boards where you can collect designs that you like. See, you know, you see an advertisement, ooh, I like that. I like the color combinations. Put them in there, collect them. You can go to Facebook books and ask them, you know, there's communication I change. They'll give you their opinion. Now, you can ignore them. We have to extend grace, but you can also get some really good feedback from them. I had to do a sermon series and my pastor goes, I don't know. I think I want like a tree or something. Helpful. And I went to the group and said, hey, this is what he said to me. This is the verse. What do you guys got? And I got 20 different ideas. And it was fantastic. And I saved those ideas because, you know, they were fantastic. Critique yourself too. You're like, oh, I like that one, but I hate that one. So these are all the resources I've saved for you. I did pretty good on time. And they'll be available for you. There's fonts in there, design, sermon graphics, colors, books. The best book I can recommend to you is the Non-Designer Design book. It is an awesome book. It's in its 4th edition. It's still relevant to today, but it's a fantastic book. Free photos, Unsplash, free Bible images, those are free. Unsplash has phenomenal photos in there. There's clip arts, Facebook groups, and if you need to reach me, that's my email address.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I think we want to move to questions.
I know that was a lot of information, so I'm sorry.
Oh, someone asked, what is a sermon bumper?
Sermon bumper. You ever seen a trailer for a movie where they come out and they say, coming up soon is a movie? Well, they actually do that with sermons. They put together like a little 30-second mini movie for a sermon series. They're like, coming soon to whatever, you know, is about the sermon series coming up.
Let's see. And then someone asked, what do you think the best fonts are for youth groups?
So I am really fond of, it's Kimberly Gershwin, I think is her name. And she creates these wonderful fonts at dafont.com, Dafont, DAFONT.com. And she's got some wonderful, just kind of playful fonts. And she's a Christian, and I donate to her so I can use her fonts because I just think it's the nice thing to do. And so she's got some amazing fonts that are still feel a little grown up, but still feel playful for them. So I would check out her fonts.
And then Cheryl asked if there's any guidance, impact, and color theory related to colorblind populations.
There is. So that's a unique one, especially it depends on whether it's print or whether it's screens and how that impacts that. But there is some out there. She'll email me. I'll give her some links and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll also include the full presentation on Caffeinated Church too, for those asking. And then someone asked how they can learn more about eye direction and flow.
Eye direction and flow. That is a great one to learn about. So the best way I would honestly recommend that is take your favorite ads and things, print them out, put them up over the room, and then just turn around and look at them and watch where your eye goes. That does a lot for how you see the eye direction and flow. It usually, most people go this way and then down, right? We've been trained to read like this, unless you're in the Middle East and you've been trained to go like this. But most of the time you go top and down. But if you put a photo over here, then it changes it. And if you put a big photo down here, it changes it. So that's how we disrupt with design. So that's where you really just studying it changes how you see it. Any other questions? I know I gave you guys a lot of information in a short period of time. I hope it was helpful. And I am happy to answer questions after. You're going to think and mull it over and you're like, I forgot to ask that. Ask. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is art, A-R-T, at Rhonda, R-O-N-D-A, P-A-H-O-L-A LAZZARI.com. There goes Mike. He sent it to everybody. He's on it. You check the chat, it's in the chat.
Perfect. Then I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Rhonda, for that excellent presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Many blessings, prayers for you all as you navigate this. And don't let your pastor use Comic Sans.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.